Thank you to everyone for taking the time to be here. Over the next hour, you'll hear about ALA's Resilient Communities Grant Initiative, which we're offering to help libraries engage their communities in programs and conversations that address the climate crisis. In this session, we'll share information about the need for this work, especially at this time, review the grant benefits and requirements for you, and walk through 2 programming ideas that can fulfill the grant terms and that may be also of interest to your library more generally. After our presentations, we'll have plenty of time for your questions. We're very lucky to be joined today by the Resilient Communities National Project Advisory Team. We have 4 incredibly creative, dedicated, and experienced librarians who have been very generously guiding the ALA project team in our efforts to offer meaningful climate change programming resources to the field through this project. Our Resilient Communities advisors and today's presenters are pictured on screen in speaking order. So I'm going to introduce them now while also noting what each person will cover. So this is something of an introduction as well as an agenda overview for the webinar. First, we'll hear from April Griffith, Director of the Eureka Springs Carnegie Public Library in Arkansas. April's going to speak with us about the need and the opportunity for libraries and librarians to lead efforts to build sustainable communities, especially now. I'll talk briefly about project goals, benefits, and requirements, and then Bibi will talk a little bit about how to apply online. Next, Madeline Charney, Research Services Librarian with the University of Massachusetts Amherst Libraries, is going to walk through her experience screening one of the documentaries that's provided through this project. It's called Fire and Flood: Queer Resilience in the Era of Climate Change. Then we'll hear from Beth Filar-Williams. Beth is head of the Library Experience and Access Department at Oregon State University Libraries. And Beth is going to talk about convening virtual book clubs that address climate change. Finally, Juan Rubio, Program Manager for Digital Media and Learning at the Seattle Public Library, is going to moderate about a 15-minute Q&A period for us. So I want to thank Madeline, April, Juan, and Beth for joining us and for everything that they've contributed to our project. Again, our advisors are available to take your questions during Q&A after the main presentation. So with that, I'm going to hand the microphone over to April Griffith to tell us a little bit more about why we think this grant opportunity is important to explore, especially during this time of disruption and challenge driven by the COVID-19 pandemic. So I'll hand it to you, April.
Thank you, Lainey. Well, I suppose we were thinking that some of you might be wondering why libraries and climate change, especially now. Well, in many ways, we think that the COVID-19 pandemic has been a lot like a natural disaster. People were told to stock up on at least 2 weeks worth of food and to leave our homes only for necessities. And as part of that fallout, a lot of weaknesses were revealed in supply chains and just processes and how we do things. There were shortages on everything from toilet paper and cleaning products to flour and just seeds to plant in the ground. And the digital divide was made especially clear as students were ushered into virtual classrooms, and many citizens were told to apply for unemployment and file their taxes to receive their stimulus benefits online, despite the fact that many people here in our country still don't have access to high-speed internet at home. But despite all that, in many cases, we saw that libraries came out strong. While certainly many of us did not have pandemic protocols as a section in our disaster preparedness plan prior to this, I'm sure many of us do now, we did what we do best, which is we supported our communities by answering the phones and directing people to the resources that they needed most. There were ebooks. Overdrive released statistics that ebook circulation soared on a national level. And that was one way that patrons and our community members were able to mentally escape while staying safe at home during this really trying time. We answered the phone and gave out the phone numbers for the food bank here at my library. And the unemployment office. If you couldn't access it, if you couldn't file online, we were the place that you would call to get that phone number. Even just giving out the password for our Wi-Fi signal helped people quite a bit. And we circulate Wi-Fi hotspots. We started that program at my library at the end of February, and it felt very timely because they've been flying off the shelf if people has really needed those. And I know some libraries even just kept their bathrooms open to the public. They shut down the rest of the buildings, but left their bathrooms open so that members of the homeless community could come in and properly wash their hands, which is what we've been all told to do. Again, here in my library, we have a seed library, and we have card holders who live here part of the time. I live in a tourist destination, a small tourist destination in the Arkansas Ozarks, and we had people saying that they couldn't get seeds anywhere and they wanted to start their garden. Gardening has been booming during this time, and so we mailed out seeds to those residents both near and far. And now months later, we're planning virtual programs and outdoor programs as a way to continue to support people during these really trying times. It's this incredibly divisive moment in our nation. And this is a way that we can bring people together and show that community abounds, and we can do it in a safe way. So we can foster that community, in addition to even basic things like trying to find creative ways to offer access to computers so that people can fill out resumes as they're trying to get back to work. So what we've seen during all this also is what some people call the great pause. Not everyone has stopped what they're doing. I know certainly a lot of us have probably still been very busy, but a lot of human activity has slowed down and ceased while we were all sheltering in place. And as a result, globally, we've seen clearer skies and cleaner water. And bicycle sales are doing great as people are looking for a different way to commute without the close proximity of public transportation in bigger cities. And farmers markets also are booming as an answer to the desire that people have to have fewer hands involved in touching their fresh food and that food supply. And while there weren't actually dolphins in the Venice canals, here in my hometown, we saw foxes in the street. I have a colleague whose daughter goes to school. She goes to Dartmouth, and they're hearing reports of bears on campus. So nature is sort of creeping back in, and people are becoming more mindful. And we're wondering now how we can carry this momentum forward, this great energy, and how people will change their habits. And I think that libraries are already doing this work. We say that the bread and butter of library operations, at least what people think about all the time, are books and collection management. And that's a really key component of the solution towards resiliency. The idea behind collaborative consumption and the sharing economy is something that libraries have been doing since we began. And that is a big part of what's known as now these libraries of things. I'm certain many of your libraries circulate things other than books. Maybe some people circulate bicycles or fishing poles, all sorts of creative things, because we don't necessarily all need to own these things if we're not using them all the time. And we're creating targeted programs and services that are going to help further this goal and help carry this positive momentum forward. And I think we all agree that if you're here today, you see the power of libraries and how we can be a big part of the sustainability movement and creating resilient communities. And I'm going to pass the microphone back to Lainey.
Great, thank you, April, for offering such thoughtful framing. Over the next few minutes, I'm going to give an overview of the project goals, the benefits, and the guidelines. All of this information and more to help you plan an application is available at ala.org/resilientcommunities. Resilient Communities is supported by a private donor. It's an amazing family of librarians and educators, as well as an engineer, who contacted ALA with a desire to get films, books, and programs about the climate change crisis to libraries. With their support, ALA will make 25 Resilient Communities grants to libraries, public and academic libraries. We're envisioning this as a pilot project that we really hope to build on after the first round of grants wraps up next spring. There are 5 goals that guide the Resilient Communities project. As you're planning an application for the project, we encourage you to really consider how your library, your unique library, can best work toward these goals locally. The first one is raising awareness and providing accurate information about the climate crisis to the public. The films with public performance rights that are provided by the project can help with this. I'll talk a little bit more about those in a moment. They offer one way to engage your community. Grant funds can also be used for other collection materials as well. Grantees are going to receive a lot of recommendations for other films and other books that are a good fit for the project, but we also invite you to identify your own materials to purchase with grant funds. Lectures and panels are another great way to provide information. All of these really are opportunities for you to determine what works for you locally and propose those plans in the application. The second goal is to engage library staff in local partnerships and environmental justice efforts that collaborate with and center those most impacted by climate change, especially communities of color and underserved communities. We require one local partnership in order to apply. A little bit more about that soon. Our goal with the grant is to foster mutually beneficial, meaningful coalitions. We know that teamwork is at the core of the work ahead. To put it mildly, we hope this project will move the needle on deepening and expanding relationships within your community. We also want to support libraries in their efforts to create space, and of course, virtually as well as physical space right now, for communities to engage in conversation, to mobilize for the initiation of sustainability policies and practices, and to build more resilient communities. Another goal, or maybe better described as an intended outcome of the project, is to designate more libraries as climate resilience hubs. ALA is working with a Massachusetts-based nonprofit, Communities Responding to Extreme Weather, or CREW, to provide specialized training and preparedness resources for public distribution. Together, ALA and CREW will help participating libraries provide intentional community support during extreme weather events. And finally, ALA seeks to identify and document relevant, replicable programming models for future national distribution. We hope to build on the work that Resilient Communities libraries will do and maybe are already doing, sharing your programmatic and community building successes with the field. Now about the grant benefits. Libraries selected to receive a Resilient Communities grant will receive a range of benefits. They're outlined in the application guidelines. First, $1,000 in cash is provided, and we invite everyone to use that as you see fit to accomplish your programming goals. Funds can be used to purchase collection materials, as mentioned before, pay speakers or presenters. You can use the money for AV or technical needs for virtual or in-person events. You can spend money on marketing or promotional efforts, to purchase supplies or hands-on activities, or really in any other way that will support your local goals and program plans. Successful applicants will be asked to report out on how the money has been spent at the end of the grant term. We don't require receipts, we just want descriptive information about how the grant has been spent. And we don't need, in the initial application, information about how you plan to spend the money specifically. The next benefit is a small collection of documentaries, docudrama with public performance rights to use in screening and discussion events. ALA planned, of course, to provide successful applicants with a physical collection, a 5-part DVD collection, but our plans have shifted a little bit due to COVID-19, so I'll just say a few words about access. Chasing Ice will be provided on DVD with public performance rights. It can be added to circulating collections. Any of the DVDs can be. How to Let Go of the World will also be provided on DVD. Additionally, with support from Bullfrog Films, We'll offer access to a virtual screening room that will be provided to support synchronous virtual events if you choose to pursue that. Decoding the Weather Machine will be provided on DVD, and it is also streaming on Netflix and via the WGBH website. That is cleared for use in free public virtual screening events. We offer The Boy Who Harnessed the Wind. That is available streaming on Netflix. As part of the grant, selected libraries will receive a 7-month free subscription to Netflix in order to support access to that film. And of course, there are other films to be accessed that are approved for public performance as well. And that can be used in free public virtual screening events. And finally, Fire and Flood. That will be provided through streaming access on Vimeo. That format will allow virtual screening events. And in a few minutes, Madeline is going to share her experience talking about screening Fire and Flood in her community. The final list of benefits is on the screen. We offer digital promotional materials, posters, bookmarks, web graphics that help tie your work to the national project. There's a Resilient Communities Programming Guide that will be published in October that'll have all kinds of ideas and resources to help you in your programming efforts. This is a big one, we hope, inclusion in what will be a Resilient Communities cohort. So a community of practice really dedicated to taking a leadership role in education and resilience building efforts that are led by libraries and library professionals. And finally, climate resilience hubs support this kind of straddle fit and requirements categories. ALA, as I mentioned, is partnering with CREW. CREW is dedicated to building grassroots community resilience through hands-on education, service, and planning. So our grantee libraries will receive print and digital educational materials about emergency weather preparedness, as well as a range of other benefits that include web-based trainings and one-on-one support from the team at CREW. And now a little bit about eligibility and requirements. All public and academic libraries are eligible. Applications will be peer-reviewed by programming librarians who are not affiliated with an application and not affiliated with the advisory team. Grantees will be required first to work in partnership with at least one community partner organization. During the application process, we'll ask you to name a community partner and provide one letter of support. Partners that can help engage underserved communities with your program plans are particularly encouraged. Then this is the other big requirement, which is really to host 3 public programs, and those can be virtual or in person during the term, which ends April of 2021. One, we ask that it be a film screening and discussion event using one of the works provided by the grant. We completely understand that COVID closures and restrictions will factor into what you're planning and that your plans may change between the time that you apply and when you're actually executing your events. Grant resources can support outdoor screenings, virtual screenings, asynchronous screenings that are followed by a virtual discussion program. You can also screen a full film or just a portion as you see fit. We really want you to make decisions that make it a successful experience for your community. And then to convene 2 or more additional community programs or events as you prefer. These can focus on climate science, sustainability, emergency weather preparedness, environmental justice, or another related subject that's important in your area. We're really looking for your creative ideas to address your community's needs with these 2 programs. And we really hope that this grant offers financial support, not just for new work that you're excited to do, but also maybe for some programs that you may already have been developing in your community, that it can provide support for things you're already doing. Then again, back to the requirement and benefit area to designate your library as a climate resilience hub. So that's really a commitment that asks your library to share educational material from CREW and continue hosting one educational event each year, even after the ALA grant term ends. Educational events can be anything: film screenings, book discussions, lectures, resource festivals. We're just really looking for that commitment to offer something for your community in the years ahead. And finally, to provide a final report on project activities that is due to ALA in May of 2021. Next, I'm happy to pass the microphone over to Bibi, my colleague in the ALA Public Programs Office. Among other things, Bibi is overseeing the Resilient Communities online application process, and they're going to share a little bit more about that right now. So thank you, Bibi.
Yes, thanks, Lainey. I'm going to share a different screen now. So what we'll do is when you go to the ALA website, so ala.org/resilient communities, you'll see this lovely page here with our logo, and it has lots of information, including our project guidelines, frequently asked questions, and an application preview for you to look at before you begin the application process. But once you're ready, you'll go ahead and click Apply Now. And you'll be taken to ALA's grant system. We use a system called Foundant. And you'll be prompted to either log in if you already have a Foundant account with us, or you can create a new account by simply clicking Create New Account, and you'll be taken to this account creation page. It's something good to note that if you are an ALA member, this login is different from your ALA membership login. Regardless of this grant opportunity, you do not need to be an ALA member in order to apply. But if you do have a membership, that won't be the right login for this. You'll want to go ahead and create a new account. And once you do, you'll be able to be in our system and you'll be able to fill out the application, no problem. I can go ahead and bring up an application for you. Cool. I don't have my right login credentials. So if you give me just one moment, I'll actually pass the mic back over to Madeline, who is going to give us some wonderful programming ideas. If you need any help or with applying or figuring out the system, everything is very self-explanatory once you get into the system. But if you need anything, feel free to reach out to me at publicprograms.org. publicprograms.ala.org, and I'll be able to assist you with anything you need as you fill out the application process. Or over to you, Madeline.
Okay, thanks, Bibi. It's so great to see all these questions popping up in the chat and seeing you sharing resources already, because part of what excites me about this grant program is the community building that happens between the library workers that are applying and then becoming grantees. This is a really great leadership opportunity. I'm really happy that you'll be picking a community partner, but that also as library workers, you're going to be on the team and you're going to be one of the voices in the room when you do your film screening and the other two programs that follow. So the networking is great. It's a proactive, get involved. And I think just like someone else said, showing up here, I'm guessing that you're really feeling the climate change emergency very personally, as well as you might be feeling it in your communities and in the profession. So good for you for listening to that call and showing up and making it making change and being an agent of change and bringing meaning into these times that we're living through. And also, I think that personal growth is definitely an outcome of even just applying. It's going to really ask you to delve into what is important to you, where your values lie. So I want to tell you about my very successful experience at the UMass Amherst Libraries when we screened this documentary, Fire and Flood, Queer Resilience in the Era of Climate Change. It's a powerful film. The topic of climate change is quite ripe, shall we say. So know your audience, know your community, and when you do your discussion, be ready with some group guidelines. And in the programming guide, we will provide you with that. And by group guidelines, or sometimes called group agreements, what we mean is that you're ready to navigate and facilitate especially virtual discussions with emotional intelligence and having tools at your ready. And I think a lot of us are already seeing the need to be skilled at how to do online discussions, because for some of us, this is a new way of bringing people together, and it really helps to be prepared. So one thought is just throwing out ideas for how to manage a room. Sometimes people do popcorn style when it's time to respond, which can be empowering to people in the room to just speak up as needed. It can also be kind of unwieldy. You don't know who's gonna take the mic or, you know, take up a lot of airtime. So you wanna have these agreements in place where people understand how to share the space. So you might also wanna be ready with some methods, like one that I've used in group settings called rounds. So when it's time to have a discussion, you as the library facilitator would call on people one by one, and then they would either take a turn to be lean of speech. That's another good term that reminds people to be clear and direct about the points they want to make. And also they can say pass, so nobody is pressured, but it really keeps a conversation flowing to do these rounds. And that is a method that I learned through a self-governance technique called sociocracy. And finally, another thought, just to get yourselves ready to do these kinds of discussions for whatever purpose, is this idea of using a talking piece. Some of you might know that World Cafe is a style of bringing people together for community conversations that ALA actually did some training on pretty recently. So another idea is use a talking piece. See my pen? You pick something up, you give your group these directions, you pick up and everyone notices, oh, Madeline has the talking piece. And then all eyes are on that speaker until I say, I'm piece back, or you can say, I'm complete. And then the next person would pick up their talking piece. So we're just putting these ideas out there to help you think about what it means to be a leader and a guide in these interesting conversations in your communities that could be very alive and that you want to manage skillfully. So in terms of the technology, there's so many ways to do of synchronous screening. You could use, I'm just learning, Slack, Google Meetups, Discord, Facebook Live, Instagram now has a way to do synchronous screenings. And if you want to do something asynchronous, like with a forum, that's another option for doing things that are offline. And yeah, the partners is really exciting, thinking about who in your community, which groups you might like to lift up. So maybe working with the LGBTQ community and inviting them to be in on promoting this event and being one of the voices in the room to lead the conversation. And also to know that Vanessa Raditz, who is the filmmaker, has offered their availability to Skype in and be part of the conversation as well. So you have lots of options there. And with that, I will pass the mic over to Beth.
All right, thank you. All right, I am going to talk to you a bit about the book discussion. One way to meet your programming requirement is a book discussion. Now, book clubs are something that happen in a lot of libraries already. I'm sure many of you are hosting book clubs, not always virtual ones, though I've been seeing during this time of the pandemic, a lot are popping up. As far as the book discussion goes, it's book reading and discussion are always a big part of it. Madeline just covered some really great methods for facilitating. And I think if you're struggling at all with or worrying at all about some of the things she said with some of these hard conversations, this might be a great time to think about your partners that maybe you could join with that have experience, and it could help in that regard. I'll talk a little more about partners in a minute. I wanted to mention there's various ways to host a book discussion, and a lot of it's going to depend on your time, your staffing, and your engagement, how much engagement you want. I'll throw out a few examples to get you thinking. There's the one-time thing, like read this book and join us for a discussion, and then bring in a local expert to kind of take it from book to action a little. There could also be open sessions, such as just even have an open session where maybe you have a few ideas of books you could read on climate change, but maybe you invite people to say, what's a climate change book that you've read recently? Let's just come and share and have kind of like a lightning round of sharing. You find out good reads and maybe make connections that way. Some of those are easier, low-hanging fruit. One that takes a little more timing would be an ongoing session, like a lot of us traditionally think of with book clubs, setting up maybe several months that you're doing a read, you're meeting once or twice a month, and getting through the book slowly, like really diving in and really having some good conversations about it chapter by chapter, or however you want to do it. Doesn't have to be linear. This is a good example of something we're doing now at my library. I'm at an academic Oregon State University libraries, but we're doing a book club read with our local public library, Corvallis Public Library. I know there's someone here from Corvallis Public. Hi. We're joining together as partners, as library staff, to do a read. So this is more for the staff side, but we had so many people, like 45 people signed up, that one example, if you have large groups, is think about that. If you want a very engaging discussion, not just the expert or someone reading, but having this kind of discussion, you kind of want to keep it small. If you get a lot of interest, that's great, but maybe think about using something where you can break out into small groups, like in Zoom. You can get in breakout rooms, or maybe you pick different times of the week. So there's several sessions. You got to have enough facilitators for that. So you got to think about staffing, but partners could be a great help. And there's also, what we're doing is we're setting up some like curriculum talking points, discussion questions. So the facilitators don't have to do much but run the session, and we'll provide them, here's some questions for each week and some guidance. So there's different ways to get that going if you have a large group. These are all more synchronous ways for everyone to join in. But there's also asynchronous. So if you just want to have something that people can post and comment and converse when they're not live like we are here, there's ideas like Goodreads, for example, you can do discussion boards in there. Facebook, not Facebook Live, but I know Sustainability Roundtable, sometime in the last year, I don't remember exactly when, they were hosting on Facebook, like, read this book, and then we're going to do a question each week, and you can comment and get discussion going that way. So different levels and different ways you can do this to get it moving. But I would say partners are really key. These folks are a really important part of the grant, not just to help with, well, I will say a key is not just for the grant, but in general in your communities, as you know, it's really important for people to come together. Intersectionality of different groups, things are happening all around. We need to sort of build that together to have that momentum to really make change in our community in order to build resilient communities. We can't be in silos. So this grant can really help you think about how to connect and maybe make some connections that will last way beyond the grant, we hope. So some things you could think about if you're not sure where to go, think about environmental clubs, like K-12 environmental clubs. I'm sure there's science teachers or professors that you could connect with. Rotary Club, Nature Center, Garden Center, places like that. Your farmers market, who's doing work there. Boy Scouts, Girl Scout, Boys and Girls Clubs, those sorts of things. Environmental conservation groups, citizen advisory councils. One great example I read was in New York. They were partnering with the local radio, the public radio station, could also be your local radio station, and they were connecting for a book read where the hosts, while they're doing the radio show, we're going to talk about some of the questions to get the readers listening to pay attention to that, and then have discussion on social media and things like that. So that's a really unique way I hadn't seen before. I was reading about, I think it was Santa Clarita Public Library. This is a great example of bringing in your local partners for something like this, taking it from book to action. So reading Garbology, I think it's called, by Edward Humus. So about plastics and garbage and all of that. Oh, someone's saying that that's their program. Yay, it's super cool. So I have to mention this because they're taking, this book is about like microtrash and plastics and things like that. And they're doing a panel discussion after people have read the book with local scientists, professors, and experts. so that they can talk about, okay, well, this is great, we read this, now let's talk about the condor preservation and action that's happening. And so we're taking the book and taking it to the local and like seeing what can we do to kind of connect these things and realize we can make change in our community. So I think it's a great example of how you can bring it together to your local. We are also in this grant program going to be supplying ideas to you. April's working on a lot of those ideas on connections to the action part after the read, like virtual hands-on program ideas. So a lot of times you read a book and then you could follow up or suggest people follow up with, you know, up crafting kits, gardening, how to simply garden, like plant some basil in your kitchen, like simple things you can learn from some of these books that you can apply. Things like wildflower seed bombs, do-it-yourself compost bins, sewing and slow stitch programs. All of these things we're going to provide some more examples, and I'm sure you have some of your own, but think about how you can tie those in together. Our films are another one. You provide a filming, provide a book, and then bring some people together in that regard as well. The last thing I'm going to mention are, I have some pictures on the screen here of some books I'm going to recommend, that we're going to recommend that you might think about as a book read. The Field Guide to Climate Anxiety. I have to say, I really like this book. I think it involves everything from you're stressed out, you're like, oh my gosh, this is too big of a problem, I don't know how to deal. But this book really gives you some great guidance. So things like mindfulness is really important. They talk about gardening. You could take a lot of things from a book like this and then create other programs for it. Another one you all might be familiar with is Drawdown, which is great for offering really short chapters on different types of things. You can pick and choose what might be useful to your community. And then there's a great website with questions and follow-ups from, okay, I read about solar panels. How can we do that in our community? So some great opportunities there as well. The Polluted Promises book I have on the screen is about environmental racism and the search for justice in a small southern town by Melissa Checker. It's an older book, but I think it's super important about the environmental inequalities and how environmental injustices are so interconnected, but also about activists and community members who are making a difference. And that's kind of what we're hoping to do here. Two more things I'll mention. The Emergent Strategy book might seem like, well, is that really about climate change? Well, it is. It's about society help, self-help, and planet help. It's all interconnected. And this book gives you a really great way to think about new patterns and how to emerge. It's also a very nonlinear book, hard for someone like me that reads very linearly, but lots of great stuff in here. And actually, this book talked about that book. So it's all interconnected. The last thing that I will mention is Sustain RT also has a blog. I have the link on the screen here. The blog, members have been posting some book reads with discussion questions. So just some great examples out there of some great climate change and resilient books that you could think about doing. We'll talk about more next week, but I wanted to give you some things to get you thinking. And with that, I'm going to pass the mic over to Juan, and we are now going to be opening for some questions to answer that you have. Thank you.
Oh, hello, everyone. I think that there are many questions about collaborations and partnerships. One is about the letters of support. How specific do I need to be in the letters of support? And I think that it will make your proposal stronger if you have a letter that will show more details about the collaboration you're going to engage with your partner. But you can also have one that is supporting the program in general. There's also another question regarding academic libraries. Can an academic library in one institution work with another academic library from a different institution? I think who our advisors would like to take that, or Lainey?
I can jump in to offer just a few thoughts, but then I would love to hear thoughts from Madeline or Beth, since they're both with academic libraries. In terms of a partnership requirement, we both want to allow the flexibility for you to identify an organization near you that you think will expand your efforts. We're obviously hoping that multiple partnerships will come as a result of this, but to meet the requirement, I think the short answer is that yes, you can partner with another academic library or another academic institution. Academic libraries are great to bring in expert speakers and presenters, but in terms of a competitive application, I think we're also looking to bring underserved communities into your programs, looking for partnerships that may promote outreach. So those are my thoughts, but Madeline or Beth, if you wanted to add anything or help out with that question.
Well, what comes to mind for me is, I guess we're going on video now, partner with your student organizations. They're looking for ways to engage, and that could be a really, really important opportunity for them. And also I'm thinking of town-gown relations, so your municipality. And of course, like Beth said, there's a myriad choices. What would you say, Beth? Do you want to add?
Yeah, I was going to jump in. Actually, you got the student side for sure. I run public services. I'm a big student-focused person, and I think this is, the students on our campus are ready for some change. It's a great idea. Our sustainability office or other professors on campus is good too. But I do think outside of like the academic community, it's really easy to get insular in just academia. So working with another academic institution is great, especially if it's a community college, I would say, or someone that you can kind of support each other in different sort of focuses. But I would say maybe if there's a way to reach out to Town and Gown. I worked at another university before where we did 15 years of a film and discussion series, and we partnered with the local town, and it just really pulled the town and the campus together in ways that it hadn't. So I'd encourage you to think about that as well.
Yeah, similarly, there was another question regarding, can I work within a group within my institution, right? And I think that, yes, you can, but it will make it more competitive. You will reach out to other community member outside of your institution. There was another question regarding the program guide. Would the program guide will be available to the grantees or to people outside of the grantees? And I think that's a question, Lainey, do you want to answer that?
Yes, absolutely. It will be. All of our advisors are working very hard with Sarah Osman in the Public Programs Office to publish this guide by October. It is our intention that it be shared and made freely available as widely as possible. We hope people outside of the grantee cohort will take advantage of it for sure.
Yep. Another question that is in here is like, where may I find relevant data on the impact of climate change in my region and community? And I think that this program guide can point you in the right direction. But I think that you can also reach to any of us or the programming, the ALA group. Then there is the restrictions regarding funding. Could money be shared with the partner organizations so that they could, for example, develop their web resources on addressing the climate change? Yes, right? That correct, Lainey? Am I right?
Yes, absolutely. Really, the only restrictions that we place on funding is that it is not to be used for the library's indirect costs, but it's absolutely fine to plan to use some of those resources for a partner organization, for their time, for their expertise, whatever makes sense. And in terms of, I saw another question about the timeline. The funds need to be spent really by April 30th of 2021, but since reporting isn't due until March of 2021, that's really sort of the drop dead date for spending the grant funds down.
Okay. Okay, I think any other question that we have an answer over here? One other question that might be in everybody's mind is like, you know, the library doesn't really need the money. Should I still apply? You know, and I think that sometimes we have to see at the opportunities that this grant might bring beyond the monetary value, right? Many of my grants that have been successful to me begin small and then they grow to be bigger and great ideas later on that grow. So I encourage you to apply, you know, regardless of whether your library might need the money or not. Any other questions that we have? Anybody else?
I saw that there was a question from Christina about creating a climate resilience community member advisory group as part of the grant and whether or not that would be an acceptable grant activity. And I believe what we've written so far in the programming guide, I'd say yes, I think so. We've been talking about how the recently ALA came out with a guide, I think in the last year or two, about community dialogues and how beneficial those have been to the communities who've implemented them, because it gave, like my library did it, for example, with our community, it gives you an awareness of the different resources that are out there. So I think that would be a wonderful way to implement your energy towards creating a program for this grant.
Yes. So regarding the recording of this webinar, it will be available later on. We'll put it on the website, and then you also will receive an email with a link to it. I think Vivian also had a question regarding audiences. Can this program be tailored to younger audiences, elementary school kids, younger kids, or is it just for adults? I think that the answer is yes, you can target it to all audiences. I don't know if somebody wants to add anything to that from the group.
Well, I was going to type in, but I'll just say intergenerational programs are powerful, and we really need to work all together. There's a term I love that was invented by Glenn Albrecht, the symbiocene. Instead of the Anthropocene, where we've broken it, it's more like, how do we come together? Led by the youth, as we've seen by people like Greta Thunberg, with the older amongst us leading from the side. So I think intergenerational is definitely the way to go if it works for your community.
So I think that this is an important question. Matthew is asking, will MP4s be available or only DVDs? Other branches are not open. I think that Lainey covered a little bit of that, but can you give us a little more information about that, Lainey?
Yes, I'm sorry. This is the question about the format of the films?
Yes, yes.
Yes. So 3 of the films are available on DVD and the other 2 are not, for production reasons that really relate to COVID. I'm doing a quick count. Fire and Flood, Decoding the Weather Machine, How to Let Go of the World, and all the films except for Chasing Ice will also be available in a streaming format, so that you can share them at least streaming in a virtual event or in an outdoor screening event. I'm not sure if that helps.
Okay. So here's another question for Lindsay from Northwestern Arkansas. If wanting to engage with a community without consistent internet access, will the guide have ideas to bridge the gap without in-person events? I think we're going to try to include those ideas. We're working on the programming guide, all the advisors, and then we will have something in there that will help you think of some ideas that are not necessarily technology driven.
April, did you want to add something about that?
Yeah, I just wanted to jump in and say, hi, Lindsay, you must be my neighbor. And yes, coming from a rural community where I think the last census data showed that 40% of our county doesn't have access to high-speed internet at home. That's definitely something that's on my mind that we're including in our ideas about how to do these programs for people and reach them who aren't connected via the internet.
Mm-hmm. Okay, here's another one from Christina Gomez. She's asking, we are considering creating a climate resilient community member advisory group as part of the grant. Community members will advise and direct the library on green initiatives and programs. Will this be considered an acceptable grant activity? I think yes, right? It's, I think it fits the, one of the activities, right? I imagine that this will include other things engaging the community.
Lainey, do you want to take that one? I mean, I was thinking that we're asking for programming. So what if that newly forming group did a public forum on what their activities are going to be? That's how I'm thinking of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I apologize. I was responding to a question about availability of films beyond the grant recipients. Is there something that I need to weigh in on?
Yeah.
I'm so
No,
sorry.
I think it was just about can I have an advisory group, and then can that be part of the activity, right? And the answer is yes, as long as it is accompanied by other programming activities, right? So it can be that activity, but then also reach the community and have that awareness of climate change, resilient hub, etc.
Yes, so I think that when we say you need to host 3 public programs, we really mean programs / events / activities. And if you're gonna, you know, devote the same amount of time that you would to an in-person, say an in-person film screening, to building that kind of advisory group and bringing people together for the purposes of, you know, forward motion and work, that is absolutely valid. And you can include that and write that up as one of the 3 programs, events, activities for the grant requirements, for sure.
Okay. Okay. So this is a good question from Casey. The guide programming ideas will be available in October, but the application is due in September. When we need to include those programming ideas in your grant application, in our grant application, what do you think, Lainey?
Yes, so if you look in the guidelines, and part of the reason we're doing this webinar is because everything on the website can be so sort of blah, but there are links that go out to several different really thoughtfully and heavy detailed descriptions of programs, so full-blown program ideas that have been published on programminglibrarian.org, that you can really just sort of take what's there and overlay it and write up how you would do that in your own setting. So there are ideas there that you can use and react to. The programming guide will definitely be more robust. And among other things, we'll have sort of reading lists, film lists, a way that kind of brings together all the supporting information about each of the films, pre-existing resources that we have access to through the project that we're going to organize for you. So there's more in the guide, but there's still information that you could use now to plan your application.
Okay, I think that there's another question about the indirect cost. So the grant does not support indirect cost, right? Indirect cost is right, the extra administrative cost that goes into grants, right? So that's not covered within the grant.
Yes. I'm not quite clear on that question, but if you would send an email to publicprograms@ala.org and maybe just share a little bit about the specific circumstances that you face with your institution. It sounds like maybe an academic institution. Really, the way that ALA does grant making for public programs, we typically look at the contributions of the library, everything that would fall under indirect costs, and the work of the staff as essentially cost share. So the resources for this project aren't intended to have the library's day-to-day functioning covered. This would be certainly that you can pay partners, you can buy supplies, you can buy stuff for your collections, you can pay speakers and presenters, but it isn't intended for sort of like the operating costs of the library. I hope that helps, but definitely send an email and let us know what you're dealing with, and we can try to help make the opportunity possible for you.
Yes, I think there's a question about the programming guide again, and I think that the programming guide will help you with ideas on how to implement the program, right? So it's going to have things such as what Madeline shared today. How are some guidelines that you can use to have a productive discussion online about a subject, or ideas about the virtual book club. There's going to be also ideas about how to do a virtual film discussion. So you can use all of these resources and ideas in the programming guide so that it can help you deliver and implement the program later on. I think, I don't know if do we have any other questions? I don't see any other questions that we haven't addressed. Yeah, I think those are all the questions that we have.
Okay,
so I'm gonna pass it
great.
to Lainey now.
Great, thank you. We'll keep an eye on the chat for the next couple minutes. If we could just go to the next slide. I wanted to take a minute just to say thank you so much to April, Madeline, Beth, and Juan. They have been so incredibly generous with their time throughout this entire project. We could not do what we're doing without them. I so appreciate you being here. Thanks to BB for all of your work with the technical support and all of the organization leading up to this session today. I wanted to invite everyone present to consider joining us for the second webinar that we're going to offer next Wednesday. It's 2 to 3 p.m. Central Time. That will really just be an opportunity that's more informal to come together, to ask questions, to share ideas, and just generally build community and a workspace for you all to access the project team with your questions. We'll send an email to you with a link to this recording, with a link to register for that session next week, and a link to a survey that I think BB is going to drop in the chat that we hope you can take just 2 or 3 minutes to complete for us. And then finally, I just wanted to thank everyone for taking the time, for your interest in being here today. Please email us at publicprograms@ala.org if you have questions, if there's anything that we can do to help. I do also want to say ALA staff will be gone during the week of August 17th, which comes a little bit close to the end of this grant period. We're on furlough and won't be able to respond that week, but otherwise we would love to hear from you. So please reach out if you have questions. Thank you all. I see a question from Carol. Should we invite partners to the next webinar? That would be great. We'd love to have them. Please feel free to do that.
Okay.
I wanted to call out Madeline's comment in the chat, which is that the advisors are also available. So that is so huge and so great. Please take advantage of that. Just to manage communication, you can send the message to public programs, and there may be emails dropped in the chat too, but we will route your message to advisors if there's something particular that you would like some consultation with or about. they're available to help y'all out. Okay, well, it's 1 minute after. Thanks everyone for your time. We're going to close it out. Hope to see you next week.